WHMIS stands for Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. The purpose of WHMIS is to reduce injury, illness, or disease caused from exposure to hazardous products materials. It's about working safely with different chemicals found in most workplaces. WHMIS is a law under the Canada Labour Code and is applied in Ontario as a regulation under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. All staff must complete WHMIS training. There are 3 key principles of WHMIS: labels, safety data sheets, education, and training. What does WHMIS cover? Products that meet the criteria set out by Hazardous Products Regulations, which fall under the Hazardous Products Act. If a hazardous product is used in a workplace, it is covered by WHMIS. Which products are not under WHMIS? There are a number of products that do not fall under WHMIS, even if they are a chemical. The reason for this is WHMIS is about common workplace chemicals. Certain chemicals only pertain to specific industries, and so they have their own acts and regulations. It's important to note that while a product may not be under the requirements to have a WHMIS label and SDS, employers must still provide education and training on these products. What is GHS? WHMIS has aligned with the Worldwide Hazard Communication System known as GHS, the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. Aligning with GHS provides many benefits, including more comprehensive hazard classification criteria. New hazard classes include physical and health hazards. Physical hazard criteria are consistent with the transport of dangerous goods. Standardized language, standardized SDS format, and more comprehensive requirements. What are the supplier duties? Suppliers who sell or import hazardous products must classify hazardous products. Classification is determined based on comparison of all available hazard data for the ingredients or mixture to the WHMIS requirements. When a product is a hazardous product, the supplier must label the product or container, and they must provide a safety data sheet to their customers. What are the employer's duties? Educate and train workers on the hazards, safe storage, handling, and use of the hazardous products. Ensure hazardous products are properly labeled. Prepare workplace labels. Provide workers with access to up-to-date labels and SDS. What are the workers' duties? Follow safe work procedures and use required personal protective equipment when handling hazardous material. Engage in education and training, using information properly and talking to supervisors if content is not clear. Notify your employer or supervisor about problems with labels and safety data sheets, such as improper, unclear, or missing information. Report any violations of the Occupational Health and Safety Act or WHMIS to their manager, supervisor, HR. Support coworkers to safely work with hazardous products and report hazards. A supplier label must appear on all hazardous products received at workplaces in Canada. Must contain the following information: name of product, product identifier, name of supplier, a statement that a SDS is available. Before a chemical product arrives and is accepted at a workplace, the supplier must affix a supplier label. If at the workplace the chemical product is diluted or decanted, the employer must ensure measures are in place for another supplier label or a workplace label to be affixed to the new container. This is an example of a WHMIS supplier label. A workplace label must appear on all hazardous products produced in a workplace or transferred to other containers by the employer. Replace a lost or illegible supplier label. Include the following information: product names, safe handling precautions, may include pictograms or other supplier label information, a reference to the SDS. These are the 10 pictograms that are involved in the GHS. Knowing what each of the pictograms stands for will help you be safer in the workplace. Decanting. What is decanting? Transferring off a hazardous product into another container, different from the original A workplace label, is required for this process for storage and handling, and for product control. Why is decanting used? Mainly it's used for safer handling. It makes employees' tasks easier. It helps to transport a chemical from point A to point B when the original container tote is too large. Additionally, it's used to control the product's use. This ensures that only a certain amount of the chemical is dispensed at a time. This is an example of decanting at GLC. Tote is directly from the supplier with the label. As you can tell, it's all fine print and hard to read but provides all the information required. The jug shows how GLC workplace label appear. Propane container disposal. When a propane tank is empty, make sure to store the empty bottles in a fireproof cabinet. Empty propane containers should be stored upright and only surrounded by other empty containers. On a weekly basis, the empty propane containers should be moved from the non-flammable cabinet to the drums located outside. SDS always has 16 points, and in Canada needs to be available in English and French. How to read an SDS. First, you want to identify the product by looking at the name, use, restrictions, hazard symbol, hazard statement, prevention, storage and disposal. You then want to identify what first AI measures would need to be taken if an incident occurred with the chemical and what due to if it accidentally releases into the environment. Then you will review the handling and storage. Will explain the conditions for safe storage. Next, you will review exposure control and PPE. This will explain to you the length of time an individual can be exposed to a chemical without risk, and will explain what PPE to use if longer lengths of time are needed using the chemical. You then want to review the physical and chemical properties. This will explain the physical state, color, or odor if it has any. It will explain what the chemical looks like. You will identify the stability and reactivity, which will explain which chemical it reacts with and which it doesn't. Lastly, you will read about the disposal considerations to learn about how to properly get rid of a chemical and if there are regulations that address the disposal. Hazardous material must be disposed of poorly. Safety data sheet are located in 2 areas of GLC employee entrance gatehouse. Routes of entry. There are 4 ways that a substance can enter your body. Ingestion. The substance is taken in through the mouth. Example, accidental swallowing of a cleaning product. A mask would be the best PPE to mitigate the risk. Inhalation. The substance is taken into the lungs through either the nose or the mouth. Example, breathing in paint fumes in a small room. A mask would be the best PPE to mitigate the risk. Absorption. The substance is taken in through the surface of the skin. Example, working with chemicals for a prolonged period without protective gloves, solvents can soak through the skin. A glove or hazmat suit would be the best PPE to mitigate the risk. Injection. A less common route of entry is by injection below the skin, such as by way of a puncture wound. This form is mainly in the medical pharmaceutical industries. Control of hazards. There are 3 ways that a hazard can be controlled if it cannot be eliminated completely. Starting with what would make the biggest difference. 1. Engineering controls. These are the best types of controls to minimize employee exposure. May include general ventilation, local exhaust, closed piping systems, isolation or enclosures. It also includes eliminating the hazard material or substituting the chemical with a less hazardous one. 2. Work practices. This type of control includes worker education, training, good housekeeping, proper storage, personal hygiene, and rules compliance. 3. Personal protective equipment. This type of control must be used only when engineering controls cannot control the exposure completely. The PPE used must be adequate for the situation, i.e. respirators, air packs, chemical aprons, rubber nitrile gloves, etc. Employees must be instructed on the use and care of such equipment. There are different effects that a chemical may have on an individual. 1. Acute effects occur immediately or very soon after exposure. Example, rash after touching a chemical. 2. Chronic effects are delayed occurring after years of exposure. Example, developing cancer after years of exposure to chemical without PPE. Under WHMIS legislation, workers have the following rights. Right to know about any hazard that they might be exposed to. Right to refuse unsafe work. Right to participate to consult with and participate in the Joint Health and Safety Committee. How to prevent exposure. 1. Proper education and training received. 2. Wear PPE correctly. 3. Review SDSs. 4. Questions.